The following is a production of the University of Minnesota, driven to discover.
Well, greetings everyone. In this video, we're going to start a 4-part series on looking at what are the ways that the peer learning experience has an impact on the facilitators, or some programs call them the leaders of these peer study groups. More research has been done in more recent years, and I'd like to be able to share some things that I've discovered along with some of my research colleagues. Someone who's inspired me in trying to figure out why does this change occur is Dr. Alexander Aston. He probably, along with his other colleagues, came up with one of the most powerful models for trying to understand why does change occur with college students during their time at the institution. Probably the one book that I would most highly recommend for you is taking a good skim through is What Matters in College: 4 Critical Years Revisited. He develops a model to try to understand all the variables, and there's something like nearly 300 variables that have an impact on college students and what it is they get out of the experience. It's a very complex model. It's written in a very understandable, very consumable fashion. Highly recommend that you give a good skim to it. But if you wanted to boil it all down, he said, well, students are going to bring something with them whenever they come to the institution. That's what he calls the input. Then they have an experience. And he ends up talking about different kinds of experiences. I'm not going to go and try to explain all of this right now in this really brief video. And then finally, that ends up having an impact in creating outcomes. Well, this really helped me a lot in trying to figure out why it is that facilitators, that's what we call them at the University of Minnesota, why is it that they have displayed such changes? Well, that ends up leading to this particular model here. For goodness sakes, I'm not going to try to talk about all of this during this really brief video here. I'm working with other colleagues to refine this model, make sure that it makes sense. But let me just hit a couple of highlights here. I'm not going to go into all the detail, but this goes back to, it's very similar to what we just saw with Dr. Aston's model. There's something that the facilitators bring with them to the institution. They bring lots of backgrounds and experiences and tools. Then whenever they come to the college, that's the college environmental models, well, you end up having a training program for these facilitators. And this is just simply a sample of the kinds of things that the facilitators in our program experience. And I think this would be probably very similar to other peer learning programs out there, peer-led team learning, supplemental instruction, and all the other ones. They end up having an experience of being in the classroom, running these review sessions. So they end up having these job functions, which they need to do. It's their job description. Well, their experiences with doing those things are going to have some immediate outcomes for them. Things that you're going to naturally are going to happen to you because you're doing all those job functions. And then finally, after you complete your education and you're out of the academy, well, these are the long-term outcomes, and those have been documented through various follow-ups that we've had with our facilitators, and also looking at the professional literature of what other programs have reported. What I'd like to be able to do with you is let's simplify this a little bit here. It's a little too much. Like I said, that'll end up being an entire publication of itself. So once again, the facilitators, they bring their inputs to their experience, something about their backgrounds, life experiences, and the rest. And just as I indicated in that previous chart, well, they're in the environment here of college, so they're going to be professionally developed. They're going to go through training programs. They're going to have trainings and professional development during the academic term while they're serving as a facilitator. And then obviously their job experiences. And the immediate outcomes for the facilitators, where they're going to learn how to be able to manage groups. They're going to have contact with faculty members. They're going to learn about assessment. They're going to learn about conflict resolution. There's disagreements inside of any group. Trying to be able to marshal everyone to go in a direction is challenging. And then finally, the long-term outcomes here, and you can see some of the samples here. So once again, I've not discovered anything unique. I give homage to all the people who have done all the previous research studies, and I think I have a slide coming up here in a moment where we list some of these things. I think part of the reason why this is such an amazing experience for the facilitators is the complexity. Once again, we could end up spending half an hour talking about all of these different roles, but just kind of look at the spokes on the wheel up here. These are all the different constituency groups to which the facilitator interacts. And one of those I put here is their own self-reflection. So they've got all kinds of people in their groups, the instructor, the person who's in charge of the peer learning program, the staff members, fellow facilitators, and also other campus resources and other people who they're consulting to help them do their job. I think this is the reason why facilitators have a very rich experience. As I said, I give homage to all of the previous studies that have been done that show all kinds of things occur whenever people have experienced. And I think the last time I counted this up, it was probably at least 60 plus research studies that I've taken a look at. And they look at these outcomes. What are skills that the facilitators display that are noted by others? Or they are skills which they've developed and they self-disclose that have been developed. So once again, I'm not doing anything unique with our studies, but the difference is we're trying to figure out the question, not what, because these things have all been happening and we've seen documentation about this going back for decades. The question is why? Why is it that these kinds of outcomes are occurring for these facilitators? So once again, this is just another list here of some of the kinds of outputs that students have. Oftentimes the facilitators, they never really talk about how rich the experience is. They just simply sometimes say, well, I was a group tutor. And that's all they put on their resumes. We spend time with our facilitators towards the end of the academic term to encourage them how to describe this very rich experience on their resumes, because these job experiences and the skills which they obtain, well, they turn out to be the kinds of things that future employers are interested in and might end up selecting them for a position in comparison with the hundreds of other people applying for a job. It's very competitive to get into graduate school. It's very competitive to get into medical school. In recent years, more emphasis has been placed on the admissions process, looking at applicants who seem to display the ability to communicate with small groups, the ability to communicate with people of different cultural backgrounds. You think about doctors, they just don't talk to the patients anymore. They also talk with the entire family. And the more diverse our society becomes, the more essential it is for doctors to be able to more comfortably and effectively communicate across cultural differences. Well, that's the reason why we encourage our facilitators to include some of this language here as they talk about this experience that they just had. And these are the kinds of things that can make a difference on getting into grad school, getting into their first position, pursuing other kinds of opportunities. Once again, facilitators oftentimes are very humble, and they don't always talk about the complexity of the position. So if you're working with young people like this, help to remind them how rich their experience is. Well, these are some of the research publications which are either been completed or are in progress. And Amanda Haney was my research assistant with nearly all of these publications here. And I just want to give a good shout out to her, because if not for her, I don't think we would have gotten to the complexity level of being able to match up what happened with why, and being able to link theory to what actually occurs, because theory was something that was left out a great deal in most of those previous pieces. So I think that understanding how do you link theory which helps us to understand the process and helps us understand the why, can be so important. And that's why I'm really excited about these different publications. All of these that have all been published up here through 2016, they're all available online. And in case you're not able to find several of them, just contact me. You'll have the contact information slide here in just a moment. As we look at the next 3 videos in this series, these are the 3 that we're going to take a look at here. One of them has already been published, which is looking at vocational identity. And you notice that's kind of a common theme here among all 3 of these positions, is seeing students not for what skills they say they have, but how they think of themselves. And that's a different question. That really is. How do they see themselves on the inside? And I'll save talking about any more of those. And I just simply want to put up here the slide of how to get more information. As you can see here, we end up having a web page with lots of information. We end up having a YouTube channel, which has been set up, which also includes interviews with some of our facilitators. We also have a podcast where also I share information about recent research, as well as also we have interviews with facilitators from our institution as well as other ones across the country, and I hope we'll be able to have some with some of our international colleagues. I mean, peer learning programs are operating around the world. I have contact with people in South Africa and in Australia, and I think it'd be really rich for us to see from a cultural point of view, also the United Kingdom, to see how they end up seeing this experience. We also have a bibliography, annotated one, 1,400 annotated citations about articles about the 6 major peer cooperative learning programs that I follow. And that's all available for you online. And also, in case you'd like to see what are the training materials that we use here at the University of Minnesota, well, we have that one online. And this one is over 200 pages long. And you'd be more than welcome to take any pieces of it that you thought was helpful for your own program. And here you can see the contact. Give me a call on the phone. Here's my general website. And also, here's my email address. I hope that you find this particular series as exciting as I do. Thanks for listening.